All right. Good morning, Dr. Imani Price.
Good morning, Dr. Chevette Alston.
Welcome, everyone, to the Empowered Mind. We hope you find us enlightening and elevating and good for your spirit. And I think today we're just going to talk about how we got started in the field. So I'm going to let you go first with the first question.
All right. So, Dr. Alston, tell us, how did you get interested in the field of psychology? What motivated you to pursue this?
Wow. So I am a geek. I always started that way. When I was 12, I was looking at the OSHA handbook with a friend, and we were going through careers, and I saw a psychologist, and I looked through and I read through the job description. I thought, that is awesome. That is fabulous. I want to do that. And then I read how much education it was, and I was like, I'm not doing that. But God has a way of bringing you back to what you're supposed to be. And so I have been, wow. I started out in computer science, excuse me, and I switched to children in society, graduated, and then came back and got a sociology. And then that's when I started working on my master's. It was in counseling, and that's where I got into the field. That's where I started working. And then I worked in alternative school. I worked in a traditional high school. I've worked in courts. I've worked in community centers. I've worked in social services. So everything in my career is like a roundabout way that's brought me to where I am today, which I greatly appreciate because it gives me a way to relate to my clients because I've been somewhere where they've been.
Yeah.
What about you? How did you get here?
Yeah. So, my path was a little more direct, and that doesn't typically happen. Most people, when they go to undergrad, they change their major.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that. So in 11th grade, so before 11th grade, I liked accounting and thought I would be a numbers person. That seemed kind of cool and interesting. But 11th grade, we had a psychology course.
Mm-hmm.
And in my psychology course, one of the things we had to do is we had to get the Psychology Today newspaper. So, booklet. So I was looking through Psychology Today, and then I started getting fascinated with just how the mind work and how people come to the things, some of the psychological things that happen to them, how, these events end up causing these kinds of dis-ease, disorders in people. So I started being interested in those connections. So through 11th grade, I noticed that people would come to me and talk to me about things. You probably have noticed that also. Like you're the one that people go to tell things to.
Right.
And you and I have this in common also, having the strong religious background, like the strong spirituality. So with me having a strong sense of spirituality, there was always like empathy in me for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 11th grade, at one of the parent teacher conferences, the teacher said to my parents, the best thing you can do for her is get her a psychology dictionary and get her started on her path, because I think this is what she should do. So, and I was listening and saying, well, yeah, this feels like me. So through undergrad and then of course through grad school and stuff, this has been the career that I've selected. I worked at a law firm for a short period of time in undergrad to pay my expenses. But the interesting thing was, although I was the admin, the attorneys used to send people into my office to cry and talk about what's happening in their lives and things like that. So I was the empathy person even before I had the title.
That's that calling.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a ministry and a calling when it's the thing that you feel like you would do for free. It's the only thing that interests you. Out of all the career fields you could be in, this is the one that you want. So this is how I've come into it. And this is what keeps me in it.
Right.
And the goal for now is to expand the way people see mental health and expand the areas to where we take it.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me about your some of the clients' situations that interest you the most.
Oh, that's good. I think we have this in common too. I love the focus on women
Hmm.
because when I remember telling you during my interview with you that we our voice today, we take care of everybody. We take care of our kids. We take care of
Yes.
our parents,
Yes.
especially if you're in that tween stage between your children and your parents. Um,
Which we both are.
Yeah, we
That
take
is-
care of church. We take, we're always taking care of people. And I think, as women, that's kind of innate. It's a human nature, which is a blessing. But at the same time, at the end of the day, very rarely does anyone ask mom, "Are you okay?" or "What do you need?" or "What can I do to help you?" Because she's
Mhm.
looked at as that pillar of strength in the family, which is good. However, we sometimes don't take care of ourselves. And
Yeah.
so to be an advocate for us, to encourage us, when I sit down with female clients, just to give them a voice or an ear to let them know that, it's okay that you're mad at your family right now because, they ate dinner and just left all the dishes on the table. It's okay. You still love them, but that was kind of foul. um, I do like that. Um, I think because I've worked in jails as an officer and then as a director, sometimes a clinician within that, I do kind of have a heart for people with criminal backgrounds and the trauma that comes with it,
Yes.
because it can come to a point where it's normalized to live that kind of lifestyle, and so to go in and out of jail for them is kind of like us going to work every day, but for them it's normal, and it's not. And until there's someone to come into their life and tell them you can have and do better,
Mhm.
um, they just keep doing the same thing. So I think there's a little bit of me that's still left in there. It's a
So
hard.
the psychology of it, like helping them to see themselves differently.
Hmm. Or just cognitive restructuring, looking at the world outside of the way it was given to you. Like sometimes we come into the world and our family is our first introduction, and so they tell us who we are. You
Absolutely.
come into a family where criminality or going to jail or because of where you live, your SES, and that's a part of their lifestyle, it can be normal. It can be a rite of passage sometimes to go to jail
Mm.
and embrace that lifestyle. But again, until your clinician or friend or you're introduced to something different, you won't know any better. And the whole adage, when you know better, you do better.
Absolutely.
And in psychology, sometimes in jails and prisons, that's the first time a person has sat down and talked to a clinician. And when you tell them they have PTSD, they're shocked and amazed because they think PTSD is associated with going to war. When they've been going to war their whole life, they just don't know it.
Wow. Now, the military psychologist in me really grabbing hold to what you just said about the PTSD and people believing that it's
Hmm.
something that happens only in combat. I'm constantly having to dispel that myth
Hmm.
because my 10 years in the Army showed me that, and we know this, I mean, it says it in the DSM, it's not just combat
Right.
related. It's anytime a person has been exposed to, or someone close to you has been exposed to death or near death experiences,
Right.
it brings on this traumatic what am I trying to say? People experience these symptoms
Hmm.
and brings on can often bring on the diagnosis. But yeah, we'll talk about that in in another broadcast just about PTSD, what it is and what it is. And I think there's so much misinformation even within a military setting about who has PTSD and who can have PTSD and for what
Right.
reasons.
And what it
But
looks like, a lot of people don't know. They think it's the movies. They
yeah,
always get us with these hyped definitions, but it is not really as it doesn't present as awful sometimes as people think it is. But it's not a good diagnosis.
No. And, you know, same with depression, anxiety,
Mhm.
and how it looks in men and how it looks in women.
Right.
One of the reasons why I wanted a clinic that was focused on women is because I know that, just like you said, women are often the caregivers, the caretakers of everybody. We are the nurturers,
Right.
oftentimes by nature,
Right.
and we have so many roles, but the one role that we fail to take care of is taking care of ourselves.
Mhm.
We often neglect ourselves, and we will do that and say, and not even think about it. It is just often the expectations, and definitely within families you see more or less of that on one child. So
Mhm.
in a family, every girl is not the same. There are
Right.
some girls that there's more expected of. There are some families where there's very little expected of that female.
Mhm.
So if you're born first, or if you might be an
Mhm.
only child, those things also can play into how we care for ourselves or how we neglect ourselves.
Mhm.
So that self-care, self-love is often not in there for women, but
Right.
we will do a really good job of taking care of everybody else
Accept ourselves.
except ourselves. And there
Mhm.
is a cost to not taking care of yourself,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
psychologically, physiologically, and emotionally, to not
Right.
taking care of yourself. So, of course, we're seeing women all the time, every day, from different walks of life, but the
Mhm.
stories are similar. I
Mhm.
always tell people. And I think that at the core of many of our concerns is some level of
Mhm.
relationship with somebody. Sometimes it's a relationship with ourselves
Right.
that we're in a battle with.
Right. And add to that, there's sometimes a guilt for wanting to, as a woman, wanting to, just eat a cookie by yourself or just to go off and have time by yourself. There's sometimes a societal guilt that comes with
Yes.
just wanting to make time for yourself. And that's not true.
Mhm.
Everybody else gets to have their alone time or gets to have their game time or golf time or whatever it is. But, if we take a minute and sit down and breathe, a lot of women just feel bad for, like, I took some time. I could have been doing something else. And that's just, um, that's not good. Again, family teaches us, it's that first introduction. And even
Yes.
when we interact with other people, schools, families,
Mhm.
we'll always come back to that baseline. And if that's what you've been taught, it can cause a lot of anxiety in a person to sit still sometimes and breathe and take time for yourself.
Yes, and I know that that's one of the things that we're constantly having to encourage the women that we see in our practice to do, to
Hmm.
sometimes stop and be.
Hmm.
And the being is good. It's not always having to do.
Right. Right.
And we wear the cape.
Yeah. Right.
We're the super women. We can do this, that, and the other. I hear women saying it all the time about all the things, and there's a badge of honor sometimes and a sense of pride
Mhm.
that I have stretched myself beyond
Right.
whatever, and I got all these things done. But the one thing they didn't get done is that they didn't get anything done for themselves
Hmm.
personally. When I ask women, oftentimes when we start our journal prompts, I usually start with the same thing, unless they come with something very specific. But when we start our journaling, I always ask, who are you and what do you want?
Hmm.
And I don't know about the women you've worked with, but I know that most of the women I've worked with cannot tell me what they want.
I was just thinking that.
Yes, they can't identify it. And I'll say, well, who were you? Like little girl you, when
Right.
you were 10 years old, what did you enjoy? What did she used to do? How did she um spend her leisure time?
Right.
And we're like, what, leisure time? Adults have leisure time other than vacation, and sometimes that's not even leisure. It depends on who you're taking care of, but
Right.
it's like, who was she? And that is the most difficult thing for adult women to tell us
Mm-hmm.
who they are and what they want.
Have you ever been riding down the street and you see the license plate and it says like Brian's mom or Mrs. So and so?
Yes.
That person they have kind of melt their identity into their child or their spouse, and it again, that kind of, not individualizing, not
Mhm.
giving themselves their own identity, but that blend into I am what my husband is, or I am
Yes.
what my child, especially for military wives sometimes, and it's an officer's wife, then
Mhm.
she sometimes finds, I think, her identity from being his wife and not being her own entity.
Yeah, because I think in the military, the service member, of course, I was the service member, so the
Mm-hmm.
service member gets a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where you are in rank, or what the service member that you're attached to, what they're doing, then yeah, there is some credibility and maybe even some um, love. I'm not even sure how else to say it, but there is something that comes with that rank and with that service member, whatever it is that they're doing. I
Right.
know this. I
Right.
was an officer. I've only had two ranks, '03 and '04, in my
Mm-hmm.
tenure. Those are the only two. And I came in, I had a PhD. I'm a psychologist. But of course, me being the service member as a female, for the husband I had at that time, it didn't he didn't take on my identity. He had his own. He's a mechanical engineer. So,
Mm-hmm.
but in the military, because we're moving all the time, it's hard for many of the women to establish themselves, their careers, and an identity that is separate from that service member.
Mm-hmm.
Also, as the service member, there's a lot of things that we're required to do. You know this as a former military spouse. We're required to do so many things and go so many places,
Right.
and our partners are expected to be part of that, to come to the shut-ins and to come to the parties and to support us when
Mm-hmm.
we're going overseas. They play such a big role in what we do.
And it makes it really easy for, him or her, mostly her, to
Mhm.
blend her identity into that service member's life and become, you know my husband is whatever rank or has whatever status, even in the civilian world. The corporate, let's say the corporate wife or the soccer mom, blending their identity into their family, which is, again, there's nothing wrong with it. But when it comes to individualizing and that person sitting down and having their own space, and you ask them, like you said, who are you outside of my kids or my husband or my mom, or um, sometimes even for career women, my job, it's hard for women to say, I am this person. This is what I like and this is what I do.
I think that many women do not have hobbies, and they do not have a lot of things outside of their home that they're doing, unless it's the church or their family.
Right.
So what I notice with men of all ages, they may have a basketball group that they belong to.
Hmm.
They still will do men's trips, and we allow it as women. I mean, it seems fine. It's okay
Hmm.
for them to do things that are outside the family.
Hmm.
We as women often do not give ourselves those same luxuries.
Exactly.
I was speaking
Yeah.
with someone yesterday, and we were talking about hobbies and interests. And her husband has hobbies and interests, and he does those regularly, and that's great. We're still working on hers.
Wow.
And and maybe it's volunteering also, but that's still doing something for someone else.
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly. If I think sometimes if women do have a hobby, it is centralized and localized to home, so she can be home for the kids or her husband, or she's, there's the burden of the home running is on her, so she always wants to be close, or usually wants to be close to home. So gardening or a book club where everybody can come to the house.
Absolutely.
And those things again can feed into her role of being the caretaker. But who takes care of the caretaker?
Mm.
That kind of thing. So let me ask you, throughout your journey in the field of mental health, what do you think of some of your key experiences or like the encounters that kind of shaped your understanding of the importance of mental health and mental well-being?
It's hard for me to separate myself from my military experience
Mm-hmm.
because my military experience really shaped a lot of how I think about mental illness and how I approach mental health and mental illness.
Right.
Being a female in a pretty dominated male environment and with all of the hierarchies and power differentials that come with it, led me to know that women need a space,
Mm-hmm.
that we need a place where we can come and our voices matter and are heard and it's encouraged. So I knew definitely that I wanted to have a practice that was focused on the psychological wellness of women. And that it's more than just us sitting and having the conversations, but it's also about us encouraging them to find their place and their identity in this world. I always tell people that you spend an hour with me, you spend 24/7 with yourself.
Right.
And really the work happens out there.
Right.
I'm just introducing it to you. I'm opening pathways. Maybe we're learning skills together, but
Right.
then you have to go out there and you have to do all of it on your own. And then we come back and we process how it worked out. And it's not usually a one-time thing. It usually happens over the course of however long, depending on what what new skill they're trying to learn and how long they've had whatever disease or diagnosis. I don't know if I answered your question at all, but that's the thing that comes to mind. People usually ask me, why did you want to practice for women? As a matter of fact, I have gotten a lot of feedback and suggestions that I drop the name Women's Inner Fitness and just go with inner fitness. And I have resisted that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I have resisted it is because I do want women to know that this is by us for us.
Mm-hmm.
And men are always welcoming, 8% of our population that we see at Women's Inner Fitness is our men, but the focus is on women. And me being a female veteran, of course, my caseload is primarily female veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Although I see all women, I see a lot of Christian women also because of, my obvious Christian background. But we have to have space. And I think it's okay
Right.
for us to have a space that we sit in that
Right.
belongs to us.
Right.
That in this hour, you are the most important person.
Mm-hmm.
And that the focus of the people in this room, whether it's individual counseling or group counseling,
Mm-hmm.
is you.
Right.
You're the star in this environment.
Right.
And I want that for women. Even in my veterans group, my female veterans group, a lot of different dynamics happen in there. There is empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
There could be sharing and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's tears. There's a lot of laughter. But it's whatever it is that we need at the time. We affirm and give it to one another so that when we leave the environment, we can affirm and give it to ourselves.
Right.
And we hold each other accountable also.
Right.
So one of the things that we're doing is everyone has to spend at least an hour a week doing something for just themselves that costs under $20. You know
Okay.
why? Because people will go get a mani-pedi and say, hey, I did something for myself.
I
No.
was thinking that.
No mani-pedi. We all will do a mani-pedi. I want you to get creative and do something else. So it's a bubble bath. It's a walk around the park. It's going to the beach. It's anything. It might be a book. It can be anything, but it has to be for you.
Right.
And you have to be the star in it.
Right.
Yeah.
I was looking at something last night, and it said, "Can you park a car at 70 miles per hour?" And it was talking about going to bed at night, like turning off stuff and kind of like decentralizing your day and just kind of like slowing down. But I think for us talking about women and trying to park that car, making that time for yourself, even if it's just sit down and have a Starbucks coffee, just sit there in your car or in the Starbucks or at Dunkin', wherever you go, Dunkin' Donut, um, and just take that time to sip and drink and think, people watch, breathe for a second. Don't think about the grocery list or who needs a ride somewhere or what you're going to have for dinner tonight. Like you said, take that time for yourself.
Yes.
And reflect on what you learned about something that you did this week or something that you encountered or how you felt about a situation, so that you can begin again to individualize and have your own identity. So when people ask you at somewhere to talk about yourself, you can do it instead of talking extraneous, that external locus of control.
I'm so and so's mom. I'm so and so's wife. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. You are important.
Right. You are
Too.
important.
And
Mhm.
and we're constantly, I know I'm talking to my clients, I'm sure you're talking to yours too, that you're important. You have value.
Mhm.
And but you have to also determine what that looks like.
Right.
And no one can do that for you. It's
Right.
very scary. I know a lot of women that we work with who are going through a divorce or having some kind of relationship issue. A
Mhm.
big part of the fear for them is losing the identity of being connected to
Yeah.
so and so.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. The empty nest syndrome, being a parent to so and so.
Mhm.
Now I have to figure out who I am.
Mhm. Or even, in again in that tween stage, when you lose a parent, you lose that caretaker role. You also, for some people, they lose the empathy or sympathy that comes with it. I've been
Mm,
there, or girl, I understand. And when that parent dies and they pass on, that person loses part of their identity because that was a large part of their life, rightfully so.
absolutely. So, last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Tell me, how do you take care of yourself?
Oh my
Like, we
goodness.
do this work, we're encouraging women to take care of themselves and to set appropriate boundaries. How do you do that for yourself?
Ooh, in my garage, there is a 2017 Indian Scout.
I just can't believe you drive a motorcycle. I think it's so cool.
That is my stress relief. And, I was thinking it's funny. When I was my car that I got in 2013, the 13, 10, one of those as a graduation gift, was old. My Audi got old, so when I was looking at cars, I would not get a convertible.
Hmm.
Like, I thought a convertible was like not safe, but I ride a motorcycle. The way the brain works. That is my stress relief. Just to get on the road and just kind of like just open up and let the air. I don't have the big shield. I have the traditional little tiny shield. So I really get like the wind.
Mm,
And whatever is in my mind is kind of like with EMDR. I started one thing and just let my mind go and think and just let it flow through. And by the end of the ride, I'm good.
wow, that's amazing.
What about you? What's yours?
Well, I am doing so many more things for myself than I used to. I take a nap during the day between
Hmm.
clients when I have time. I regularly give myself a bubble bath. I enjoy sitting in my garden tub and having the jets and those kinds of things. We have a roundabout here in my neighborhood. I walk, and a lot of times mom and I will walk in the morning. And if I have enough time, we'll walk up to the clubhouse, and there's a big pond up there, and there's ducks and
Oh,
stuff in
nice.
it. So anytime I have extra time, I'll walk up to the clubhouse, I'll walk around the pond, and I'll just focus on that.
Mhm,
I try to do things that keeps me in the moment,
mhm.
because when we get out of this moment, there's a lot of stuff awaiting us. We all know that, and that's for all of us.
Right,
There's so many things awaiting us. We have to give ourselves the time to just be, and be in whatever that moment is.
right.
I also enjoy meditating in the morning. I journal regularly, typically in the morning. I always encourage the ladies I work with to have a chair in their room as their throne, to
Mhm,
sit in that chair. I look out over my backyard and I just journal and think and just have me time.
mhm.
So those are some of the ways that I take care of myself. I also do staycations. I will take a weekend and go somewhere local where there's water,
Mm,
and just be there in the hotel or walk around outside and just rejuvenate.
mhm.
I think that you and I, we have a lot of responsibilities. I mean, we're running this practice, right? So we have clinicians, and we have clients, and we have all these people that you and I are both interacting with regularly.
Right.
We also are parents, and we have older parents that we're also involved with. So there are so many roles that we have. And so, as we're talking to our clients, we also know the importance of us taking care of ourselves as well.
Absolutely,
So, I
absolutely.
keep that in mind. But a nap, that happens nearly every day.
Adult naps are fabulous, yes.
Yes, they are. I remember when my son was in daycare and stuff. They said Jamal never wants to take a nap. He never wants to take a nap, and I just can't understand it, because I think it's just wonderful. And it might come at noon, it might come at 3 o'clock. It comes whenever it needs to come. But I can't understand people who don't take a nap. But
I
anyway,
I really cannot.
that's
And
all.
I think also want to add to that for both of us, I think, God time,
Mhm.
time for
Definitely.
sermons or time for prayer or reflection, either at the beginning of the day, definitely at the beginning of the day and definitely at the end of the day for me, but sometimes during the day, just to
Yeah.
have those conversations about a client or a situation at home, or there's something else that's broken in the house. What am I going to do? Just to have that spiritual support.
Mhm.
I don't know how people make it without prayer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes, definitely. This the spiritual time. And now one of my goals for this year was to listen to a sermon every day.
Mhm.
So of course I go to church most Sundays, and then I come home and I like to watch Bishop, because I have time to come home and watch Bishop Jakes afterwards. But I also look at Bible studies and listen to other sermons
Mhm.
throughout the week. It is definitely grounding for me,
Right.
and foundational as far as how I go into my sessions, and how I, because some of the individuals that are coming, we meet them where they are, and we
Mhm.
try and provide what we think that they need. That's really what therapy is about.
Right.
It's not a one size fits all.
Right.
And I have some clients, when I see them on my caseload, I know it's going to be church. And I'm all right with that. I have a Vietnam era vet, and he doesn't do Zoom, so I call him on the phone and I say, "Hey, how you doing? How's God been good to you this week?" That's how we get started.
Wow.
And he tells me how God has been good to him. We talk through, different life things, his PTSD, but there's always God at the center of it. And he
Mhm.
sees how God has kept him and continues to keep him, and takes him from one place to another, and how he has made progress
Right.
over these
Right.
years. and he knows that it wasn't Dr. Price. I like to think that I'm good, but no, I'm not that great. But
Right.
it is he who lives in me.
Mhm.
And hopefully how I help bring him out in other people when we're working through their healing.
Mhm. Or for people, to add the caveat, for people who do not have a spiritual base, I think it helps just to have the clinician who has a good foundation,
Mhm.
and they can pass that meditation, or not the direct word, but just the maybe the parables, or the some of the advice that comes with it, in a different way. You don't have to throw religion down a person's throat, but you can pass some of the principles so that they can begin to live um, a life that's more holistic if it's not spiritual.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also guides who we are, and that we are part of the instrument that helps with the healing.
Hmm.
So, since you and I both have that foundation, even if we aren't talking religion with people, just, similar to what you said, it
Hmm.
is in us.
Right,
So, it is how we show loving kindness,
right.
it is how we affirm who they are and give them voice. I have another male, I'm military, so I've got some males on my caseload, but who says, I know that you're religious and I know that you don't put that on me.
Hmm.
But who I am makes that up. I am that. That is who I am.
Right.
Spirituality, it is in me. So when I'm working with him and whatever it is he's doing, I'm coming at it through a lens that is very much um, built in my tenets of being God's daughter,
Hmm.
of being a servant. And
And I think.
even, I talk about this being our ministry, right?
Hmm.
God sends the people to us.
Hmm.
I'd like to think my marketing team is that fantastic, but we know that there are everybody who comes through the door are here because of him. He sent
Right.
them.
And that servant part, that I've worked with Hindus, I've worked with Jewish people, I've worked with people who are agnostic, I've worked with atheists. It's that
Mhm.
servant part. It doesn't matter where the person comes from. To be called for a purpose means that the person that I place before you, doesn't matter race, color, creed, sex, gender, I've
Yes.
placed them before you to be helped, and to honor their presence with whatever he's poured into us. And that I greatly appreciate.
Hmm.
To be
Yeah.
chosen is fabulous.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm glad that as we're pouring into others, we're pouring into ourselves also.
Hmm.
And continuing, of course, to be fed by the word and by other things that we do. And I feel like I'm fed by you too. I think that it was such a blessing and God ordained that you came our way.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think
I really do.
we have so much in common. And people will see as we go along in the background of our lives. A two daughter family, our sons,
Yeah,
our past relationships, our drive.
yeah.
Our love of God, our drive for psychology. So much. Um, I think it's just what's it called, kismet,
Hmm.
when when I saw that ad that we sat down, the first conversation, I was stoked, and I continue to be blessed and honored to be in your presence. So thank you as well.
Yeah, just thank you. So I think that we'll wrap up with that. Thank you so much, everyone who tuned in to watch our inaugural "The Empowered Mind" broadcast. We will come each week and bringing topics that we believe are important to helping to heal and bring wholeness to the masses. So, with that, take care. God bless. And Dr. Alston, I'll be talking with you soon.
All right, love. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.